Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves.
Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Matthieu Garnier. Matthieu is one of the few procurement professionals that I actually met in person first and then reconnected with virtually afterwards. We had a great conversation about people and connections, community, and negotiation that I actually thought would be beneficial to recapture and then share with everybody in this listening audience. So, Matthieu, thank you so much for being back with me to have this conversation.
And thank you so much, Kelly, for giving me the opportunity to say things, to express myself, because I have so many things in my mind that could benefit to people around, and mostly in procurement. And I'm very happy that you are my partner in explaining all those stuff.
Absolutely, because I think when you get into some of the people topics, sometimes people call them soft topics that we'll talk through today, there's something sort of universally human about them, and I love having this kind of conversation. Now, before we get into that, I want people to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. What is it helpful or interesting to know about your professional journey up to this point?
I will try to make it short because sometimes I speak too much. I come from automotive industry, and which is probably a benchmark industry regarding procurement. And after I joined other companies, more agile, more entrepreneur, and when I shaped myself, reinventing the procurement division in my company, and it was definitely the addition of both competency, a blessing for me, a way to develop real deep expertise in procurement for automotive, but on the other side too, to discover what's important in procurement in other businesses. I arrived in the US 6 years ago, and I took another path, doing some partnership with a CEO regarding digital marketing. It seems to be weird, but it's not that weird at the end, because I was used to be pitched, and I brought a lot of things to him in order to be well received by the customers, and we developed strategies just after. And I launched my own company with a friend of mine, met here in New York. On supply chain, more specifically on supply chain, linked to the very last mile, in order to tackle the delivery failures. And that's a project I will stop. And that's where today I'm very happy to discuss with you about procurement, which is my passion, I would say, and because it's the link between human and rational and business things, and that's where we meet, I think.
Absolutely. And speaking of meeting, so one of the things that I sort of teased in my intro is that you and I met first at Art of Procurement's Catalyst event in New York City. And when we were first talking, you mentioned that you actually think it's really important to invest time, invest effort in building your professional community. Certainly, you're passionate about procurement as a function within the company for its potential. But why do you think it's so important to connect on a personal level with individuals within that community?
You put the finger on something important. I think as procurement professionals, yes, we are made of tools and processes and functional knowledge. But at the end of the day, we are probably a native social function, because we are the link between the company and all external resources. Yeah. And there is not only transactions in that relationship. And I think we are in charge of those specific aspects which are not transactional. And so we are definitely social people. We need to, because we don't manage just the rational things. We manage the human resources and the human behavior of the people internally, compensating sometimes where they feel uncomfortable. And we face people outside. And that material is definitely what we have to work on to create some value for the company.
Now, I think it's interesting when you talk about procurement working with stakeholders. One of the things that I always think back to, even from my own time in the profession, is that procurement is usually not making a decision. So we do all this work, we gather all this information, we might make a recommendation depending on the situation or the category, but we're ultimately presenting that to our internal stakeholders and allowing them to make the final decision that leads to the outcomes procurement will ironically be measured on. I think that brings us to one of our first sort of human skills that's interesting to talk about is influencing.
Yeah.
When you think about procurement's relationship with stakeholders, how does that ability to influence come into play?
There are many aspects where we definitely influence is key, and you cannot impose anything to the external stakeholders. That's their own decision, definitely. Yeah. My first company, we were in charge of deciding, even if it was not exactly true. We were in the governance of the company, the people who decided to do things, but it was a common decision at the end. And the common decision was just in the governance, the end of the process. Before that, you had to prepare everything through influence and mixing rational things and influence in order to share your vision, and not only the transaction you will make, but what will be the future? What is the future you will define, and sharing that with others in order to be sure that you are on the same page. And at the end of the day, it's like a negotiation. The reality you create, which is more or less a fiction sometimes, will drive you to the decision that is good for the company and share it.
Yeah. I like this idea of creating a reality. You know, we all sort of think about, well, the facts are what they are, and everyone's going to maybe think differently about them or have different opinions about what should be done. But do you mind talk a little bit more about the idea of creating a reality? Is it helping everyone see something the same way? Is it helping gather facts that represent the current situation? What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, I can discuss hours and hours about that topic. I'm lucky because I've been trained with, how do they name it? Rational negotiation, or there is another term in Harvard. I don't know this one exactly. And the purpose was to say, explore yourself, explore the other one.
Yeah.
Do not stick on position, but on interest. And you know that perfectly. But it's a complete mindset switch. And when you switch in that mindset, yes, you work with facts, with data, but on the other side, the material we work with is gray sometimes. Yeah. And in that gray area, you can create some truths or fictions or whatever. And that's where language, discussion, negotiation take completely the lead. That way, exactly, you can influence, and that's where we are. And it's so powerful. And I've been trained to dialogue dynamics also, depending on the way you ask, depending on the way you hear, the results you will get. It is so different. I don't say I'm the best one in this one. I'm still probably as bad as before, but at least I manipulate those things in a better way than in the past. And negotiation on that aspect is a fascinating material. You will not trick people. You will not lie, or if you lie, do not lie too often.
Yeah.
But most of the time it is just create trust. And then there are principles at the beginning of the discussion that you can agree on. And that's probably the first cornerstone you will put in the negotiation. And after everything you will build will be linked to this one. And if somebody break the rules, you can come back to the rules and so on. So I think it exists probably in other fields. I suppose that people in diplomacy are using it. Absolutely. I suppose that CEOs are using it also, consciously or unconsciously. But we have a specific position in companies where it's important for us to manipulate those concepts. properly. And when I say manipulate, it's important to practice also, because I had that experience. I failed many times, but from those failures, I learned so much.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your point about how we listen. When I think about any of the negotiations that I've had to prepare for, what is the first thing we think about? What am I going to say? What am I not going to say? What am I going to be looking for an opportunity to insert into the conversation? It's harder to come up with a strategy in advance for, okay, when the other person talks about whatever topic, I'm really going to stop and listen. It's more of a way of being. But I think that listening is the side of communication that so often gets overlooked. And yet, truthfully, it's the most important. It's both important in terms of what's the information that I take in and how do I understand it? But then also, am I signaling to the other person, depending on the communications channel, that, wow, I'm really focused on what they're saying and I'm listening and I'm paying attention? I don't know. I think when we talk about communication, it's so focused on the message that we're communicating. It's very easy, but so critical to get that listening piece right.
My partner during my entrepreneurial journey was more a salesperson, and we have very different behaviors in the way we interact with people. And he was forced in his business to take the lead on the discussion most of the time. Mm-hmm. I was used to remain silent to get more from people like him. And those two competencies are very interesting when you are able to adjust properly your behavior. And remaining silent, I would say it's also key, because sometimes people are very uncomfortable with the silence.
Yes, they are.
Through the silence, it's a trick. It's not that rare, but it's a trick. You get additional information from them. And on their side, salespeople, they have the same ability as us, as procurement persons.
Yeah. Now let's stay with that idea, because we've sort of transitioned from talking about internal stakeholders and influencing to talking about certainly negotiation, communication, active listening skills. But I think that takes us into the realm of procurement's relationship with suppliers, which is so interesting because if you think about it, outside of the C-suite, where part of their job is to be externally facing, procurement probably has more contact with outside people than anyone except the people serving customers directly. It's an incredibly powerful role, both in terms of that opportunity to work directly with suppliers, to manage things with suppliers, but also to create those results with them.
Yeah.
How do you approach this idea of building relationships with suppliers that are respectful and strong and creative, but where you also have to look out for the best interests of the company, where there might be a little bit of give and take between who gets how much walking out of that negotiation?
That's a fact. We are in charge of the relationship, and depending on the maturity of the company you work for or you work with, the dimension of relationship is more or less high. But being involved, for example, when you do category management or commodity or whatever that way, in a company like mine before, many projects were served by suppliers. The only team who was directly involved in all exchanges was the commodity team or the buyers. And doing that, they have a long-term relationship. They have a view on what will happen tomorrow, what will happen in 6 months, and even what should happen in 5 years. And that's where the relationship and the strategy are connecting. Because depending on the way you create the relationship, the question or the results you will get in the future will be slightly different. You can sometimes bargain hardly with somebody, but if you destroy the relationship with the supplier, you will not benefit from them in the future. In automotive, for example, let's consider that it takes probably between 1 to 2 years to develop a new vehicle. And now they are quite good with that. But the vehicle will last at least for 5 to 10 years, but additional spare parts will have to come later. So you cannot break the relationship. You have to consider the relationship for a long term. Even if we are very demanding in automotive, we have to consider that you cannot divorce with the supplier you have, or if you divorce, it's a decision you have to put in perspective of your strategy. And linked to the negotiation itself. You have to be fair with the supplier. And I made it a few times. It's a difficult decision to make. But if you are fair, you are recognized in the business as a professional because you balance in a fair way your interest with their interest, and they know that your interests are stronger for yourself than for them. But if they understand, it's much easier to do the job, and you maintain something that is precious for the company, the value, and that's where the value appears.
Yeah.
For sure, we can make productivity with our team. For sure, we can do cost savings, but the ultimate goal is that the collaboration, the partnership with the external resources will bring additional value for the future. And innovation is one of the aspects, but many others. I think we had that discussion the first time we discussed together, but I faced huge difficulties when the volcano erupted in France and when in Iceland, and when Fukushima exploded in Japan.
Yeah.
But the way we were served as a company, we benefited from the suppliers of the relationship we implemented for years in order to not disrupt the production we had. And yes, we could have been very demanding, but when there are not enough product on the market, they have to make some decision. And in that case, the relationship is precious, definitely precious.
And that's interesting because it's a scenario where you're investing in something for your future benefit without knowing when you're going to have to call that in or what's going to cause you to be in that situation. I mean, we all know there's some sort of black swan event on the horizon at all times, but we don't know, is it a pandemic? Is it a volcano? Is it a supply chain disruption? Is it some other sort of geopolitical issue? But if you treat people the right way, if you act in the right way and hold yourself to a certain standard, hopefully that's setting you up to have a relationship to pull on if something unexpected should happen.
Absolutely. And it was part of the training also, the dilemma of the prisoner or something like this.
Yes.
Where you have to collaborate, and it's difficult to maintain the collaboration. And that's where we are in the gray as procurement persons, because it's not it is a science, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to switch to the dark side, you have to light somewhere, and I think it's relatively unknown, or people are not well aware of those aspects, and that's where discussing today was so important for me, because I would add that discussing those topics with procurement person is easy, but sometimes if you do the same with some CFOs, some of them they are just focused on tests, they are in charge, which is a bit different. And that's where being a team is important, because we bring different sets of skills depending on who we are and the experience we have.
Now, we've focused a lot on people and relationships, but I feel like it's an interesting twist to sort of bring AI into this conversation. That's every single topic we talk about now, you have to say, well, but then what about AI? And I think human interaction is no different. I'm curious, Matthieu, whether you have any thoughts about how AI, and certainly it's a quickly changing space, but how AI is likely to change procurement roles or even the relationships that we have with stakeholders and suppliers.
The event where we met together last time was definitely insightful for me. In my life of procurement professional, I was more focused on value than productivity of my team. Mm-hmm. And it shows that it is important to make some productivity. And today, most of the software provider, they work on I would say, in a fruitful way on the productivity side. And I fully agree, it's important, and we have to do this. But the event allowed me to define a position on those topics, which is, yes, productivity is key. We will do more with less. But if we target value for the company, what I imagine, and maybe it's not true, but I love believing in that. that we have a unique moment in time where the LLM are bringing something that bridging the gap between a human normal brain or a person like me and a machine. And then to coordinate, to orchestrate the machine, we have a link now, and that link will allow us to enhance who we are as procurement leaders. And I think it's not only for procurement, but for many people who have to decide or who have to orchestrate. And I found last week a name I was looking for a long time, which is AI for me will be a cognitive partner. And a cognitive partner to help me in the way I will create some ideas. So the concept of ideation is key, and that's the starting point of a chain. So discussing, elaborating things, actions, and so on, create some innovative ideas based on what I have in mind and the culture that is available in the LLM itself. Sometimes even interestingly, the LLM is more a tool for fictions than truths, but being able to create some fictions, it creates some alternative realities, and those alternative realities are really important to be creative and imagine something new and bring more value, I would say. And then orchestration will come. There are limitations in LLM, for example, the size of the memory they can consider in the discussion is quite short. I made an experiment last week about that. But agentic is key because we will help AI through the LLM to structure the way they propose or the way they think. And doing that, we will improve the robot, the AI, the whatever, to deliver more for ourselves. So if you structure properly the agent, yes, for sure, you will access to more and more relevant insights. And then your decision, your critical thinking, the orchestration you have to make, and what you have to deliver will be definitely bringing more value.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap on this topic, I want to ask you one other thing. So we've talked again a lot about relationships, but we all know we're not just forming these relationships because it's fun to have nice friends or everybody wants to be liked or anything like that. All of it is in pursuit of some end, which is typically a form of business impact. How do you directly connect the investment that you make in network, in relationships and communication, and make sure that you can track the business impact that ultimately drives?
There are two aspects, I would say. The network itself is continuous feedback on my beliefs. And that's important because sometimes I'm like a LLM, I'm dreaming or thinking about non-existing things. As we are, as many other functions, specific function, when you are alone in the company, when you are, I would say, not in a great comprehension with all the stakeholders about what you have to deliver, the community is key on those topics because we have the same comprehension. And I would say that in an animal way, I think we work or we interact as a tribe. So it's very animal, I would say, because the experience we made, the material we have to work on and we have to work with, I think creates some alignment between the community and ourselves. And the feedback is, for me, key. And that's where investing in the community is so important.
Yeah.
Even for... I can discuss with my LLM on daily basis, but it's more important to discuss with real people.
Now, we have a tradition here at the Sourcing Podcast, Matthew, that I want to bring you in on. So the first time any guest joins the show, I give them a pairing of questions. You can pick either one, and there are no wrong answers. So Here are your options. Either what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or if you want to look at this a little bit more broadly, what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
It would be wise to take the second one, but I like the first one.
I admire you for taking the challenge.
What is a hero? A hero is an archetype, or I don't know if I pronounce that well, but it's an archetype, and the hero most of the time inspire and show the way by example. And it's an archetype, so it doesn't exist, but at least it creates some light, or in the universe, and it gives you the direction and the motivation to follow. And that's where being a hero on procurement is not only an arrogant statement, but I think it makes sense. If we consider all what we discussed before, where we travel in the gray zone,
Yes.
Having a light somewhere that shows you what direction you should take and why, and give you some additional motivation to go that way, I think it's a good definition.
I love that idea that, because we did talk about the gray zone before around sort of making decisions. I love that idea that procurement is the one holding the light to help find the way, right? I think that you can use that analogy for so many of the things that we do with the executive team, with internal stakeholders, with suppliers. And the opportunity of that, I mean, the responsibility is great, but the opportunity is equally great. And I think that's a very inspiring way, actually, to think about the role that procurement plays in an organization.
As soon as companies are large enough and for compliance or performance reason, they implement a procurement team somewhere or procurement person, definitely it's a light. It's a light. It's like between external resources and internal resources. And it's like a port. It gives you trust. Yeah. I know so many, in the past, I knew so many people not comfortable in discussing with suppliers. When it's positive, when it's just, I would say, nice discussion or whatever, they accept to be involved. But as soon as you have to take the responsibility of being demanding, tough, because you have to be like this sometime.
You do.
You are a reference. You are a light in the organization, and that's where I think the cooperation with the stakeholders is key. They recognize you for your ability to deliver, but also for the person you are in a layout of, or in the framework of person that are important in the company.
Well, Matthieu, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, all the thought that you put into this conversation. Clearly, as AI becomes more prevalent, so must our humanity if we want to carve out a place for ourselves as we move into the future. Thank you so much for being with me to record this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast.
It was a real pleasure to discuss with you about all those topics today. And I hope we will have other occasions to explore those things, because it's definitely a passion. It's a passion for me, and I think it's something we have to share with others.
I am sure we will. Thank you so much, Matthieu.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well, and always remember that you can be a hero too.